I'm Rob Rodell from Arkansas Electric Cooperative Corporation in Little Rock, Arkansas. Welcome to Along Those Lines.
Support for this podcast comes from Champion Fiberglass. Champion Fiberglass is committed to America's electric cooperatives by providing strong, durable, American-made fiberglass electrical conduit manufactured in their triple ISO certified facility in Spring, Texas.
Hi, everyone. This is a podcast about electric cooperatives, the work they do, and the challenges they face. I'm your host, Scott Hoffman. NRECA has held an annual gathering of members since its beginning in 1942. It's always been a critical touch point for electric cooperatives and a place to talk about the day's biggest challenges, exchange ideas, and to stay connected. This year's PowerXchange and TechAdvantage conferences come amid a period of unprecedented disruption for co-ops, many of whom are facing soaring demand from data centers and other major load drivers, shrinking supply caused by misguided federal and state emissions policies, and increasing changes in co-op leadership and work culture, just to name a few. To give us a behind-the-scenes look at how PowerXchange and TechAdvantage come together, and to talk about how this year's events will help attendees confront today's challenges, we have Erin Pressley, NRECA's Senior Vice President for Education, Training, and Events. Erin, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Scott. I'm super excited to be here.
So NRECA's PowerXchange and TechAdvantage are coming up soon, March 7th through 12th in Atlanta. And anyone who's been to a PowerXchange TechAdvantage will understand, just having been there, the magnitude of it. I mean, it is a huge event with thousands of attendees, hundreds of vendors. What they may not grasp is the many moving parts that are sort of going in the background that makes these conferences what they are. Why don't we first start with you? Just give us a quick summary of what each of these meetings is, who they're for, and what they offer. And then we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty of what each event comprises.
Sure. Scott, well, really, it's kind of two events co-located together. First, we have PowerXchange, like you mentioned, and that's an opportunity for the whole industry to come together, regardless of your job title, to really learn about what's current, to get updated on what's happening in the legislative and regulatory space, and really explore hot topics like AI and data center loads. Running also at the same time as TechAdvantage, our technology conference. It's in the name, right? That's for engineering folks, IT folks, operations, purchasing and supply chain management. It does a deeper dive into technology topics. As you know, technology is ubiquitous, right? It's infiltrated everybody's jobs. And so we wanted to make sure that the PowerXchange attendees could also experience what's going on the technology side. So this year, we used to call it a Tech Plus registration, but now we're calling it our Power Plus registration. And so for attendees who want to experience the benefits of both events, the content, the general session, I recommend getting a Power Plus registration. And then, of course, we have the expo, which ties everything together and is some great connective tissue where attendees from any event can come and talk to our vendors and see what services and products they have to help them get their jobs done.
Awesome. I want to get into the expo later because I love it, and that's one of the most dynamic parts of the event. But let's get into each of the events and some of the particulars that makes up a PowerXchange or a TechAdvantage. Talk about PowerXchange first. What are the various facets that make up this big, rich, deep meeting that we call PowerXchange?
You're right, Scott. It's a lot of different moving parts, and I'll try and cover some of them. So we have a little over 30 pre-conference workshops for directors. And these are for directors who want to get their BLC, CCD, or, reach that pinnacle of gold. So great opportunity over 3 days before the event even starts to get those courses under their belts. We also have some partner meetings. NISC, NRTC will have some meetings prior to us kicking things off. PowerXchange has about 19 different education sessions, while TechAdvantage has well over 60. So lots of great opportunities to learn across the time there. We've got receptions, right? There's lots of time to network and meet other folks. So we have our welcome reception that CoBank always graciously sponsors. We have the Haggard reception where we've got folks being rewarded for their awesome work in magazines. We have a diversity champion reception and, of course, many other opportunities to network with folks. I'm excited too. Scotty McCreery is going to be our entertainment night performer. I know he comes from Garner, North Carolina. He probably grew up on co-op lines himself. He'll be a fun addition to the lineup there. And then, of course, one of our partners, Touchstone Energy, always leads us in a community service event. And this year, there's a couple opportunities to work with them to sort and pack donations for the Atlanta Food Bank.
So we see how many people come to these. Do you have a sense of what a target number of attendees and registrants for PowerXchange and TechAdvantage is in terms of the sheer numbers?
Typically, we run about 9 or 10,000 folks all in across all the events. And that's a good amount of people to ensure that there's lots of folks to learn from, that the expo floor is robust and filled with folks, which we love to show to our exhibitors because they've invested a lot of time and money in exhibiting. And so we like to give them this really robust, vibrant audience. A lot of the folks who come are directors, but we're seeing a ton of CEOs in attendance. And certainly a lot of these IT folks that I mentioned are core target audience for these events.
And having been in the communications group, seeing the number of people who have their hands on PowerXchange and TechAdvantage just from my group, do you have a sense of how many NRECA staffers are part of the planning and the execution? How many contractors? How many on-site staff?
Yeah, Scott, more than we can count on our hands and toes and then some, right? It's a lot of stuff, as you said, from communications to report on the event. Certainly my team who's creating the content and working with speakers. Lots of folks on our IT team and our accounts receivable team to make sure registration and payment goes through. And that's just NRECA folks. We also work very closely with a local security company to make sure that we are safe on site in Atlanta at the Georgia World Congress Center. And speaking of Georgia World Congress Center, there's a ton of folks who work there who will be ambassadors and help desk folks for our members, who will be serving food and making sure that they're taken care of, and who will be keeping an eye out on the exhibits and the education sessions for us. And we also work very closely with the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau, and they really love when NRECA comes to town and they are rolling out the red carpet for us.
Let's pause here for a word from our sponsor, and when we come back, we'll talk about the theme for this year's Power Exchange and how it will inform the conference session.
Along those lines is made possible by American-made Champion Fiberglass. Fiberglass conduit is a lightweight, strong alternative to traditional conduit materials. It offers no burn-through, fault resistance, ease of installation, and lower materials and installation costs. Plus, durability and corrosion resistance help contribute to lower total cost of ownership for America's electric cooperatives.
I'm Lauren Irby from Delaware Electric Cooperative in Greenwood, Delaware. You're listening to Along Those Lines.
Welcome back. So I know every year we have a theme for Power Exchange particularly that sort of runs through the presentations and the breakouts. Talk a little bit about what the theme is this year and how you came to land on that.
Well, we really wanted to build off of last year's theme. Folks who went might remember we darkened the room at the general session and then lifted the lights with this light bulb, right, to kind of show the beginnings of our industry and how we've grown and innovated over time. So the theme for 2025 is really inspiration. And again, it's building off of last year's theme. And it's really how can we get folks inspired to grow, inspired to innovate, and inspired to lead their cooperatives. There's a lot going on in the industry right now, as I know that you know. And if we can provide some solutions, some ideas, and some motivation to folks, then we will have accomplished our goal of inspiration.
Any big changes in the programming for Power Exchange or TechAdvantage for the actual conference presentations?
Aside from it being more awesome than it was last year, right? That's our goal every year, to make it better than we did last year. But there's a couple key things that we're doing this year. Well, this will be our third year actually of our Women in Power reception. It's been super popular the last few years, and we're really excited to bring that back. We also are having what we're calling kind of inspiration points throughout the event, where we'll have performers. I know we'll have an artist on site who will be painting a picture of a lineman while she's there. So lots of moments of inspiration across the convention center for folks to engage with. And one of the really cool things we're doing this year is we have Ford, GM, and Stellantis providing electric vehicles on site. So our attendees can sign up and take a test drive of an EV while they're there hanging out with us in Atlanta.
That's awesome. You mentioned before how active our industry is right now, how many moving parts there are in keeping the lights on and dealing with load growth, things like that. Give us a sense of how you determine which topics to focus on for not only the breakout sessions at Power Exchange and the things that go on the main stage, but also for TechAdvantage. How are you mining the resources in the program to come up with topics that will hit the right mark when attendees are there?
Sure. And that's critically important, right? We want to get the right content to the right people so that they can take some action from it. So we start planning the content for these events almost a month or so after we close last year's event, right? And we spend a lot of time listening to what conversations are taking place in our boardroom. We spend a lot of time at all of the other meetings and events and programs we have across the year, starting to pull those common threads together of some of the things that we hear. We're reading RE Magazine. We're looking at a lot of the things that you and your team put out to help us determine what our members are talking about and thinking about. For TechAdvantage specifically, we have an advisory group of peers who help us craft that content, but then we also do a call for proposals. And so we're fielding quite literally hundreds and hundreds of topics and proposals from folks across the industry. And that advisory group reviews all of those and chooses the cream of the crop for the folks that make it to our stages in Atlanta.
Can you give us a sense of which topics this year, and you mentioned AI earlier, I'm sure that's at the top of the list, which particular topics are getting the most attention?
AI, really. That's the top, but in many different forms. Certainly operationally, right? Like how it rolls out as a policy in an organization, the data centers that are often attached to AI, right? And the unprecedented load growth that many of our cooperatives are or might be facing in the future. So, load growth is definitely a hot topic that we're going to be digging into more than a few instances. Cybersecurity is another really hot topic. And again, it has tentacles across the organization. So we're trying to dissect that a little bit and have a lot of different conversations about cyber. And then, of course, crisis management, whether it's on the communication side, how to work with FEMA, what to do when a disaster strikes. And so lots of different topics, but those are the few that I think are rising to the top that I know most of our members are talking about.
Yeah, it's amazing. Every time I go, it's just a checklist of every major issue that co-ops are dealing with. You have a presentation on. So, speaking of presentations, I'm always amazed that we get the quality of keynote speakers that we get. I mean, it's a big audience and it's an attractive audience for a lot of folks. But can you give us a sense of what goes into booking these keynote speakers, identifying them, and then getting them sort of trained up on how to talk to our audience?
We always start with our theme, right, of inspiration. And that really helps us determine what kinds of topics we want. We want to have speakers this year who not only are going to be inspirational, but also have stories about how they themselves were inspired and how they used inspiration to drive success for themselves. So, who we focused on this year, I'm super excited about. If folks could see me, I'm rubbing my hands in excitement because we have just a really dynamic lineup this year. So Damon John from Shark Tank. Hopefully many folks know of him. I've seen him speak before. He is fun. It's going to be a lot of music. For those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, this is going to be just a super fun, electrifying opening general session. And then another group I'm really excited about is we're going to have Erin and Ben Napier from HGTV's Hometown as one of our general sessions as well. And if anyone knows about revitalizing rural communities, it's these two, right? So we're really excited to hear what they're going to say. And then we spoke about AI, but our closing speaker is Noelle Russell. She's the founder and chief AI officer at the AI Leadership Institute. So she's going to be our closing general session speaker. So all of those, I think, are tackling inspiration in different ways. But I also think will bring really great energy and leaving our attendees inspired as well.
So, what is the process for identifying and booking them? And just sort of an insider's look at what you guys are doing behind the scenes. You deal with booking agents, you deal with other types of agents.
I mean, because we do so many events throughout the year, we have relationships with a lot of these speakers bureaus. And so we'll reach out to them with our theme, our dates, our price range, and they'll share their ideas. And often it's a very iterative process. They'll give us a few ideas. We'll look at some videos, something will be off, or we think the energy is wrong, or the tone or the topic, and we'll go back and forth. Sometimes we can find the perfect speaker, but they're booked and they're not available. So that's always a big disappointment, but we'll keep them on the list for a future year.
Yeah, that sounds like fun, actually.
Yeah, it is. It is. It can be fun.
We talked about the expo. We brought it up before. Let's get into sort of the nuts and bolts of the expo itself. Talk about how many exhibitors do we have? Anything new going on in the expo? What's new there?
So we have over 400 exhibitors in 2025, which is kind of where we were last year, right? It's about 100,000 net square feet of expo space for folks to wander around. We have 70 first-time exhibitors. So that means, about 20%, if I'm doing my math right, of exhibitors who've never been in front of our audience before. So a really great opportunity for our members to see who these up and comers are in our industry and what these new solutions are. On the expo, we have places to eat and drink, a lot of opportunities to network with each other and with our exhibitors. And then, as always on the expo, we have what we call our tech park. So it's 5 or 6 rooms on our expo where we'll have kind of mini education sessions on certain technology topics. And then you can just walk right out of that little room and go straight to the exhibitor who you just heard about and have a deeper conversation about their solution.
I've been on the expo floor many times, and it's so big and so dense with things that I want to go see. I feel like there's just no way to do everything. Do you have any advice for attendees on how to navigate the floor, how to sort of strategize on how to hit the things that you want?
Sure. There's 2 really important resources to do that. One is the on-site guide, which you can also see a lot of those exhibitors in RE Magazine as well leading up to the event. And then also the mobile app that we encourage folks to download before they get on site and then use it while they're on site. So whether it's your copy of RE Magazine that lists all the exhibitors, if it's the on-site guide or the mobile app, you can look through those in terms of specific topics or technologies you're looking for. If you have existing relationships with vendors, look and see what booth they're exhibiting in and go up and thank them for the partnership. We recommend to our directors and to staff to have conversations with each other before you get on site. Find out who those vendors are, who you work with. Find out, if you're have a project coming up in the future where you need to be having conversations with particular vendors and particular topics. Do a little planning before you get on site. Pick out who those exhibitors are that you want to visit. And then that way you have more of a roadmap when you get there. So you know exactly who you can cross off your list to make the most of your experience.
You mentioned that there's 70 new exhibitors, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how engaged, because we both know how much is changing in the industry and how much that's being driven by technology. And so many of these vendors are at the forefront of the technologies that our co-ops are using. Talk about how engaged the vendor and sponsor community has been with this year's event and recent events as the industry has gone through so much change.
Sure. I mentioned earlier, certainly their financial contribution, right? Of being there, investing in sending people, building their booth, staffing their booth. So being there because they want to provide solutions and ideas to us on the expo. But in many instances, too, these supplier partners have also participated in content with us. They see a lot of different cooperatives across their work and so can provide different case studies and ideas of things that they've seen and heard in the industry. And so, when appropriate, we've included them in our tech talks or in some of our education sessions. So their contributions have run far and wide, from the financial all the way to the content piece. And whether it's our service members or our associate and affiliate members, we are always very grateful for their partnership.
Let's talk a little bit about the host city, Atlanta. We haven't been back there in 15 years. Great city, lots and lots of things to do and lots of options for attendees. What made us decide to go back, and what kind of feedback are you getting from members and registrants about the choice of that city?
One of the biggest attractors about Atlanta is that I think about 80% of the country can get to Atlanta within a 2-hour flight. It's an easily drivable city. And I think among many of our cities, it's just very, very accessible. And that's really important. And many of our cooperatives are also based in that southeast, southwest area, which makes it a really easy place for them to get to. But more so than that, at the Georgia World Congress Center, where we are hosting PowerXchange and TechAdvantage, quite literally steps away from that is the College Football Hall of Fame, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the Georgia Aquarium, which is stunning if you've never been, the world of Coca-Cola. There are tons of restaurants, movie sets, and just so much fun stuff truly right outside the steps of the Georgia World Congress Center. And so we really think all of that is going to help elevate the experience. And as I said, the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Atlanta has rolled out the red carpet for us. Many of the hotels there are new and upgraded. And I really just think the whole experience of folks being in the city and being at PowerXchange TechAdvantage is going to be top notch this year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So you've been behind the scenes for 9-10 months now, planning this out. It's coming up within the next 6 weeks. We'll be there. Tell me what you're looking forward to the most in terms of the conferences and in terms of the venue.
It's hard to pick just one thing. So really it's getting to be in the place to look around and to see all of these pieces coming together, and to be able to be there with my team and the rest of the NRECA staff on site, and to be able to help people to find out where they need to go next, right? To get them to their next education session, to greet them as they walk in the door every morning, to show them where they can get a cup of coffee, really just being there on site within the members and being able to help them have an awesome experience. I think that's what I'm most looking forward to.
Any sort of insider advice for our listeners about attending PowerXchange or TechAdvantage?
Yeah, I mean, one is plan ahead, right? We already talked about that. But the second piece, it's truly the most important piece, is wear comfortable shoes. You're going to be doing a lot of walking. There's plenty of places to sit and take a load off, but you really want to make sure you've got good shoes on so that you don't have to worry about that while you're enjoying everything else.
Yeah, I learned to bring 2 pairs of comfortable shoes and alternate them day to day.
Good tip.
Well, Erin, you've been at this for almost a year already. I love your enthusiasm, and I love how connected you are to the issues that our co-ops are going to be dealing with in the years to come, and how this conference is really structured at helping them get through that. So thanks so much for coming on and sharing, and we'll see you down in Atlanta.
Thanks, everyone. I hope to see everyone in Atlanta. Thanks, Scott.
And thanks to you, our listeners, and to our sponsor, Champion Fiberglass. For more on this and other podcasts, visit us on electric.coop. Until next time, for Along Those Lines, I'm Scott Hoffman.
I'm Tori Strong from LaGrange County REMC in LaGrange, Indiana. Thanks for listening to Along Those Lines. Subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app.